back to the Knife Box channel, everyone. So tonight we got a fun video. We're going to be doing a tag video, which could include all of you. So I came up with this top 5 because the top 5 thing seems to be the hot thing to do right now. And I figure I'd do an open tag and try to think of something where it doesn't matter how expensive or how cheap your knives are, or how big or small your collection is. Hopefully you have 5 in there or more, but this video is going to be your top 5 favorite users. So in other words, on a day where you know you're going to need a knife a little bit more often than most, what are those top 5 knives that you're going to go and reach for? So I brought mine out today, and just to kind of highlight what I do with a knife. I mean, I don't do anything very crazy. I'm not in the military anymore, so my use with a knife is pretty light as far as on a day-to-day. I open boxes, zip ties, cut plastic stuff, do a little bit of food prep, and perhaps even open envelopes. Anything else, I'm just gonna go and reach for a fixed blade. So anyways, I should probably included some fixed blades, but I decided to keep this just all folders, since I think most of you guys are mostly folder knife kind of guys. And I could be wrong. I know a lot of us have fixed blades as well, but we'll keep this one all folders. So without any further ado, let's get down to it. So the first one I'm gonna talk about here, or bring out, is this little custom knife made in South Africa from Trevor Berger Custom Knives. Now this model is called the EXK. It's his smallest model, and it's one of his very popular ones. He's actually pretty well known for this one, and he does make this in a larger version. He also makes standard regular flippers and all that good stuff, but the front flippers is what his claim to fame is, or what he's most well known for, or recognized for. He's a second generation knife maker. His dad was also very well known, and he's in the African Knife Makers Guild. So I've talked to Trevor a few times. He's a great guy, knows his stuff, and this is actually one of 3 knives that I own by him. So just a fantastic knife, and all of the results are always replicated every time. They're just pretty much the standard of your front flipper knife. They always function well, the detent's always perfectly tuned, and they look and feel just amazing. So some of the things I like to highlight about this knife is, of course, its size. It's a small knife, but yet you could still get on top of it, and you still got quite a bit of cutting edge on this one. So I do like this about this knife quite a bit. Because it's a semi-neutral handle, it's very versatile in different grips, and of course, being that it's a front flipper, it is definitely fidget friendly. Another thing to mention too is the blade is N690 steel, so it's got about the edge retention similar to like VG10, for example, so it's pretty good, but it's definitely not a super steel. It's made by Bowlers, the same people who bring you that famous M390, and this one's a hand rub satin finish. Now this one's got a few scratches and such, but you can see I really like the hand rub satin finish. It does hide the wear pretty well. Now, despite the thicker blade stock up top, it's pretty thin behind the edge because of the hollow grind. And he also thought of the sharpening choil, and you can see how thin it is by the evidence of that beautiful, nice and deep plunge grind on both sides. So very clever little knife, fits in most people's pockets. Even if you're a skinny jeans kind of guy, this will probably still work. The pocket clip has great edge retention. It's simple. It's got nice, simple, light spring to it. Nothing to really fuss about there. And there's quite a few little cool details, being that it's a custom knife. You can see the engraving with the serial number here. and he did a little bit of red accenting on the G10 on the backspacer, along with a titanium liner, which just shows off that picture perfect lockup. So fantastic fit and finish. This is one of his older models back from 2015, but just an absolute delight. I love the EXK. All right, so the next one I'm going to bring out is going to be this Sebenza 21. Now the Sebenza 21 is one of those iconic knives. It's one of those knives that, you know, just a lot of people just had to have one or try it. Now that came with a lot of love and a lot of following, and that came also with a lot of hate. Now this is technically considered an old model now because the Sebenza 31 is the current model. Now some of the things I love about the Sebenza is the blade shape is just absolutely gorgeous. I love that really nice long drop point, and it's quite acute and it comes really thin behind the edge. And not only is it chamfered, but it's actually crowned where it's rounded up at the spine, and I really like that. That's a nice touch. Just makes the knife look and feel more expensive. It's got a simple, good old reliable thumb stud deployment style, which is really nice, and you can see the high sharpening choil that comes on this really high hollow grind, which is awesome. So you guys all know why hollow grinds are awesome. They stay thin behind the edge after many resharpenings, which is cool. And then of course you got this nice plain neutral handle, which is really comfortable in most size hands. Despite the size of the knife, you can see it fits like a glove. It is kind of a little bit of a larger knife, but it just indexes really quite well. Now it's kind of simple in design, as far as just two slabs of titanium to get bolted together, but it is made in very high precision, and that's what these are always known for. It's just the best quality and the most precision, and a knife that you can hand down to your kids and they can hand down to your grandkids and so on and so forth. And I think the Sebenza does do that and does it quite well. The lockup is always a lot later on Sebenza, and I think that freaks some people out, but that's just generally the way that they've always been. I also want to highlight the access to the lock bar. The spring on this thicker lock bar is a bit strong despite the double relief cut right there. So the fact that they gave you a nice generous opening hole right there, or opening moon, whatever you want to call it, gives you a lot of access, and it makes that stronger spring just much better to deal with. And then you got the pocket clip right here. This one's actually an aftermarket one. It's made of zirconium, and it is by Rip's Garage. And then I also upgraded the lanyard to a factory CRK lanyard, but just one with a little bit of gold and a little more bling. This is the tanked edition, and I believe this one is also from about the 2015 era. So there's that guy. Moving right along, the next kind of iconic knife that was another gateway knife to me was this F95 by Shirogorov. Now I went on a binge with the Shirogorovs. I just absolutely went off the deep as far as kind of, you know, looking into them, researching them, learning all about them, and then ended up buying, well, now I have a total of 3. So this is my very first one, and the one that got me addicted to Russian knives in general. So this is one of the older models, I think kind of the same generation as these. This is a Monkey's Edge exclusive, and you can see that's the Monkey's Edge logo right there. They're a shop that basically has their own exclusive rights to some of the Shirogorovs. They do red G10s and all kinds of other different frag pattern stuff, and they do a lot of frag patterns with other brands as well. Another thing to highlight about this knife, I really love the way that the clip and all the milling is done, but not only on the outside of the knife, but also on the inside is something to also mention. If you look on the inside, all the milling, which we're not probably going to be able to see much on this poor lighting, but it's all symmetrical and it's milled out quite a bit. And I also like the way that the relief cut is done on the inside on this one. It's relatively kind of more towards the center of the knife, which is going to still give you a relatively decently strong spring to the lock bar. Now this one is what they used to refer to as a 3 Bears edition. All these Monkey's Edge were the 3 Bears edition, and that used to be kind of, the way I compare it is like buying a Mustang. You can buy a Mustang V6 where they had these, which were standard titanium handles with LMAX blades, or you could buy the Mustang GT, right, which then you had a 2 Bears edition, which maybe had like an upgraded steel and maybe some sort of titanium handle. And then the 3 Bears edition added the lightning pockets on the inside, and then the multi-row bearing system. So the multi-row bearing system is something that Recurve is very well known for. It's one of the hypes about the knife, but you can see it's really quite smooth, and that pretty much has to do with the amount of surface area that the bearings provide as they're made in that swirl pattern or whatnot. So multi-row bearing system, very cool. All the milling and precision work, even on the places where you're not usually gonna look, really cool. It actually even says MRBS right here, so they always have little hidden things on the inside you can see. I also like the way that they chamfer the spot for your finger. When you're using the flipper tab, it kind of just drops comfortably right into its place. And of course, that beautiful Recurve action that they are very well known for. So that is a knife that I enjoy using quite a bit. Sorry guys, they're popping off some fireworks, but they're just celebrating this badass video that we're making right now. So let's move on to the next one right here. So now this is a knife that's kind of a surprise to me, because this is not a knife I expected to even include in a video like this ever until I eventually bought one. And that's because the look of this knife has always been polarizing to many of you, and myself included. The blade shape is sometimes much to be desired for a lot of people in the aesthetics department. But at some point in time, my curiosity got the best of me, and I ordered one, and I ended up buying one. And the last, I think it's a year and a half I've had this thing, or maybe 2 years. I've really enjoyed it. And because of the fact that I thought it was ugly, I never mind just using it, cutting boxes and stuff with it, and just seeing what it can do. And let me tell you guys, I have a lot more respect for this knife after actually cutting stuff with it than beforehand, because this recurve that comes really thin right here is just really useful. And it's quite a bit wider than a lot of the other ones that do this kind of tanto profile. A lot of times the tanto, the recurves will like terminate at this kind of shortness, you know, where you have like maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches of cutting edge here, right? And then it goes into like a tanto. This one, you can see they did a nice rounded hollow grind, which takes the thinness of this all the way to the end, and it terminates past this area. So basically the whole bottom side is a nice hollow grind, almost like a drop point. And then you got the advantage of having this little tip right here. And then on the top side, you know, you have this tip here. I think this tip is more useful for being like scraping or chisel work. This tip right here will cut. I mean, it is sharp, but this is the tip that's most useful for me. So I really like that. This knife, same thing, extremely rounded. So not only is it chamfered, but it is crowned like crazy. Despite its blade shape, I've actually kind of gotten used to it. I'm kind of fond of it now. And then all the little chamfering areas, all the little attention to details on this knife is quite incredible. One other thing to highlight too is it is incredibly thin despite its appearance on its side profile. So that's kind of cool. It's very comfortable, very light. It carries very easy in the pocket just because it's so thin. Now, some people complain about the action bouncing off the stop pin. As you can see, mine just has absolutely no issues. Now, mine didn't come out of the box that way, but I just used the same oil and the same tool they gave me, and I just kind of tweaked it to my liking. So now it just locks in that stop pin and stays in place, and it is centered. So of course, if I want to, you know, and try to slam it, I can make it bounce a little bit. But if I use the knife as intended, you can see it locks into place very nicely. So yes, the Norseman has just become one of those really fun and favorite users. All right, so now the last but not least knife here, which a lot of you guys might be surprised, is going to be this one right here. And this one is actually a butterfly knife. Now, this one is something else that's been out for quite a while. I doubt anybody here might recognize it, but this is an old Bradley Cutlery Kimura. And this is a made in USA CPM 154 blade. And it's got this very nice dark stone wash appearance. Now, this handle is stainless steel, despite most knives having titanium handles in this modern age, but the fact that it's so thin and it's milled out so well actually kind of is deceiving and makes the knife really, really light, and it's also very balanced right there in the center where you want to index the blade. So I really like this knife. I bring this one out because for a Bali song, it's technically on the very small compact side. The action, although it's on washers, almost appears like it's on bearings. These Zen pins here are just solid, and it takes a really nice edge. You guys all know 154 cm is just outstanding stuff. Very corrosion resistant, very easy to resharpen, and it doesn't chip much. It's more of a rolly type edge if you grind it really thin. So this is more of my fidget kind of, you know, on my day off kind of knife that I'll bring out. So yeah, these are my top 5 users for basically on a day where I'm gonna feel like I'm gonna need a knife a little more often than usual. So let's hear your guys' top 5 users. Now, you guys saw in the openings, I've tagged 5 people on this one, so be looking out for those guys. Make sure you subscribe to their channels as well, and we'll catch you all on the next one.